Hey everybody, what's going on? This is Jamie Dawn. I am your professional psychic advisor, success coach, evolutionary, revolutionary astrologer. And today is Thursday, and it is June the 18th, 2020. I know I released a video earlier this week, and to give you a little heads up with this eclipse energy that we're feeling. And now that Mercury is retrograde, we have several planets now all retrograde, and we have Neptune going retrograde next week and Mars moving into its home sign of Aries on the 27th. So there's some big movement that's going to be happening in the next 7 to 10 days that I wanted to also mention. Venus is going to go move direct on the 25th. So all these big energies that are going to be showing up this next week, I thought it was important to kind of set the stage. So, excuse me, what we're looking at right now is we're feeling the internal pull because it is a new moon and it is an eclipse. And so there's so many things that we're being forced to surrender. Thank you to Pluto and Saturn and Jupiter all in Capricorn. And we're being forced to surrender to the things that we can't control, while we're also feeling more internally pulled inside of ourselves, which is not always a comfortable thing, especially here in the West, where we're so driven to get things done. And remember that Mars has been in Pisces and will continue until next Saturday, where it's almost like it's running in mud when Mars is in Pisces. And it's not a bad thing, because Mars in Pisces can create that spiritual warrior, the one who is fighting for more compassion, to be able to have this disillusion, if you will, of borders and separations and that sort of thing. So Mars in Pisces can be a very powerful healer that's necessary. What we're going to start experiencing when Mars moves into Aries, though, is we're going to find more aggression or assertion. It could go either way. We should feel more driven to get things done. So I'm putting that pin on the map to just remind us all that these next couple of days, we may feel like everything is personal. We may feel that nothing is happening and there's a frustration, or there's that feeling like, I know there's something under the surface, it just isn't ready to bubble up yet. The volcanic like energy, it wouldn't surprise me with Uranus in Taurus right now that Mother Earth may decide to have an eruption or two. So I think it's going to be very important to keep paying attention to how the outer world is reflecting what we may be feeling inside, and vice versa. The other thing I want to point out, especially into this weekend, is that many of you that connect with me, you're extremely empathic. We're highly sensitive. And so there's a lot of this mistaken identity, if you will, that what we're experiencing is something happening to us instead of it being more of a collective field. And the more that we tap into that collective field, the more we're going to feel that sadness, that pain, that discomfort, and because we are in an uncomfortable time. Are there positive things? Absolutely. And believe me, I can be a little Pollyanna about stuff. I totally get that. However, and I'm not going to say this is all doom and gloom, but as I mentioned in my previous video, birthing is messy. We're birthing a new reality. And at the beginning of 2020, when I mentioned, hold on to your hats because we've got a new reality that we're finally ready to step into, that didn't mean that it was going to be comfortable. And it didn't necessarily mean it was going to be easy. I mean, think about it like the pregnancy and birthing process. You anticipate what it's like to have this child, and you start to get excited. And then by, that third trimester, you're like, I'm so done being pregnant. It's time to push this child out. Well, now what's happening is we're pushing out this new reality, and there is stuff flying everywhere. And it's important. We needed to shake it up. We needed to mix it up. So now, as we're doing some cleanup, we have to be careful not to fall into complacency. And that's where some of these retrograding planets could lead us back into complacency, simply because we're going to feel like nothing is happening. We could lose hope, or we could feel as though it's all just spinning inside of us. Nothing's going to change. And then just wait. I sense that after this new moon eclipse, we're going to start to feel like we're birthing something new finally, and that certain pieces are going to be falling into place that we can respond to. So The other thing I'll point out is that the moon in Gemini moves into Gemini tonight into first thing tomorrow morning, depending on where you are in the world. And as it gets closer and closer to the sun, we're going to probably feel this eclipsing kind of energy, maybe with our thoughts, because it's in Gemini, and maybe our communication. It may feel like it's just suddenly died down, or the opposite, where we may feel like everything is coming at us at one time. It could go either way, depending on where you're at in the collective energy field, as well as what's happening in your own body. And the reason I say that is, watch what happens when your thoughts get overly activated. It feels like everything's coming at you. And if you're on the opposite end, where you shut down your thought process and it gets foggy and confusing, then it sends you back into the was that fight, flight, or freeze mode, and you go into that freeze mode. Now, one of the things that I think I posted on my Instagram, I thought the card was really appropriate, these Starseed cards that a friend of mine gave me. It was today, the very last bit of it was about feeling the pendulum, and having your life swinging wildly from one end to the other, to be able to say, I've truly lived. And I think that's what maybe an attitude that some of us can take, is that even though these times are uncomfortable and they're not easy, we can say, you know what, I'm going to wrap my arms around them, around this stuff, and I'm not going to let go, and I'm going to go, wee, this was a great ride, and I, for one, would rather embrace life to its fullest than to sit back and let life happen to me. Now, there's always that dichotomy and that push-pull of open to receive versus always forcing. That's not what I'm talking about. But when you're called, when the world calls to you, it's our job to respond. It's our job to either say yes or no. How do I want to show up? How don't I? And then also, like I say, we're being set up for this greater energy for, we're in this human race together. How do we continue to create more equality, create more unity, and not like-minded, but like-hearted? And the like-hearted is that we see each other as that individual soul, and that the behavior is not a reflection of the pure essence of that person. The behavior is a reflection of old beliefs, old constructs that have to be broken down. And that's what I would sense that this new moon eclipse is going to offer to us, because we've got the North and South node in Gemini Sagittarius. So we're going to be breaking down those old constructs and old beliefs that just don't serve us anymore. And in doing so, what happens is we can open our mind, and we can open the dialogues. I'm going to offer this. I can see every side of everything. And one thing does not constitute, let's put it this way, one bad apple can spoil a bunch, but it doesn't spoil everything. And I think we need to continue to come back to the talking table, the education table, the don't believe everything you see. And I think that's another big thing, especially because we have that square going on with Venus and Neptune that's going to be activated in the next week or so, that we're also going to be maybe force-fed a little bit of BS. And if we drink that Kool-Aid, then, I can only imagine what may rise up from us. So I think the biggest theme to continue to pay attention is ask a lot of questions, stay really curious. Don't assume that just because it's in the news or on social media that it's a fact. Keep asking those questions. Keep, creating the change on that local level. When you walk down the street, say hello to your fellow person, and if you see somebody who needs help, help them. And just, be kind. If nothing else, be kind. Now, that doesn't mean you have to overextend yourself, but at the same time, if it's called, it's important. So these are the kind of things that we will continue to work with. I will also offer that tomorrow on the 19th, we do have Mars and Pluto in sextile. So this is telling me that there could be a nice push right before this new moon eclipse to really assert the goals, the achievements, the things that we are looking at from a bigger scale, and we're going to continue to ask ourselves, how does my desire, how does my need for a greater change and to put these processes and things in place, how does that line up with the collective good? How does that line up with healing, with the ability to be able to offer something of great comfort? I would also say that we may get a lot more documentaries, art forms, film, that sort of thing that is going to be documenting what's happening in our world right now. And so I would venture to say that there may be some announcements that come out in the next week or so that there's more opportunities to get word out, to get information out, and doing it in a very beautiful art form, and doing it in a way that may seem a little messy, but it's also appropriate. So I think that's one thing we can start looking at. I also feel like we're going to have some more breakthroughs in technology and science. I would venture to say that when Mars moves into Aries, that the race for the vaccine is going to go even faster, that there's going to be a higher level of competition, and that there's also going to be some resistance that comes in as well, because Saturn is retrograding back into Capricorn. And when Saturn hits those last degrees of Capricorn, I would venture to say that there's going to be a bit of resistance around believing what this, if the vaccine really works or not. Can we really get back into the whatever reality is? That's probably the other big thing that I would say, is that we're going to be working towards rebuilding trust. I feel that so many of us do not trust our bodies. We don't trust the system. We don't trust each other. How do we rebuild trust? Because when you're working from a collective standpoint and a team standpoint, without trust, there's nothing. That has to be the foundation. So creating safety and trust. And yes, it starts from the top down, but it can also start from the bottom up. And that, when I say bottom up, I mean the local level. How do we go about rebuilding trust within our own personal pods, our own personal communities, our neighborhoods? Yeah. So those are the kind of things that I'm just going to plant that seed, especially since it's a new moon eclipse, to plant the seed of how to rebuild trust. Mercury retrograde, I'm going to mention that now. Mercury retrograde in Cancer. As I've said before, it is about leading our thoughts, our energies, the way we connect with family, with our roots, with it, not necessarily blood family, it could be, or family of origins, it could be those chosen family members. But we're going to come back and we're going to be reevaluating, and all the RE words that come along with the Mercury retrograde. We're going to find this revisiting of, where do I belong? Where do I, or who do I belong to? What do I belong to? What gives me great comfort? What gives me security? The emotional security. And with Mercury in Cancer, we're going to have to really pay attention to how our thoughts, our mental state, could disrupt our feeling comfortable in our own skin, our own bodies, the doubts and the fears that could easily pop up if we're struggling, if we're looking at what's going on, especially because of COVID and so many layoffs. People are afraid of, their financial situation. And so in these kind of states, we're going to be revisiting, how can we think differently, even about money? And what I once thought about myself in regards to how much I made, that's changed. So now, where do I belong? I feel like this Mercury retrograde is going to have a little bit of an identity crisis for many of us, where it's like, is this really what I want to participate in even? And we're going to be internally thinking about it. Also, Mercury retrogrades have a way of bringing people from the past and subject matters from the past back to us to revisit and redo. And I just want to remind us all that we just see it as a gift, because I believe that where we are now, hopefully, is a little bit more evolved, a little bit more aware, because we can't unlearn and undo what has been shown to us, taught to us, what we have learned or what we have seen or said. So, but what we have now maybe have developed some, or evolved some tools that we didn't have before. So welcome those conversations, welcome those kinds of mixing things up. And yeah, I believe that this is going to, for a majority of people, it is going to cause them to reevaluate where they're living in a physical way. So you may find that quite a few people will either move homes altogether, will come together and join into one home. Maybe both parties leave one home and come and merge together for another. That community kind of feel. I also believe that this is a time where if the relationships are strong, they're only going to strengthen and bond that much more. And if they're not, I would venture to say that by the eclipse in Capricorn on July 5th, those relationships will start to fade, and there will be a very clear cut, a very clear distinction. So I'd love to sit and talk with you individually if you would like, or even as a group. You can find me at jamiedawn.com. I'd love to hear what is happening in your world. If you need me, you know how to find me. Thank you so much for watching these videos, liking, sharing, subscribing. And I finally figured out how to turn comments back on. YouTube changed some things, and it took me a little bit to figure that out. But please feel free to reach out, jamiedawn.com, and I'm here, guys. I hope that you have a great weekend. And if it's not fantastic, if you're not feeling like you're really plugged in or connected, hang in there. And also, you don't have to do it alone. If you want to do it alone, that's okay. But just know you don't have to. Reach out. Let's connect. Reach out to a friend. Connect with them. I know we're still in a little bit of this shutdown, slowly reopening kind of thing. And use your best judgment. I'll go back to that and just say, you have your own inner guru, your own inner authority. Trust that. That's the gift of retrogrades as well, is we go more internal and we get to build trust in ourselves that much more. So I hope that you're able to work with that. I believe we'll get practice and opportunities to practice it and to put it out there. And just know that I'm here for you. All right, you guys, have such a great rest of your week. We'll talk next week.